Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the best show of the best shows, where we talk about everything from comic books to whatever else is going on in this crazy world. You are now listening to For Canon Sake. So whether you're a normie, a wannabe expert, or wannabe try-hard, get in here. And now, for your very handsome host, this is Mr. Eric July.
Yo. Welcome to another episode of For Canon Sake. This one's actually a special episode. I do have an upcoming podcast. Depending on when you're listening to this, we haven't recorded it yet. But I do have an upcoming podcast that'll be for being libertarian, and we're going to have that focus on the political side. Now, of course, we're going to give you political and social commentary here. But generally, we see how it ties into like the more cultural things. That's the whole point of For Canon Sake, and obviously to talk about the entertainment stuff. But this episode, because I hadn't done that podcast yet, still doing some behind the scenes things to get it going. This episode is actually going to be really, really political. And it's going to be the first episode that we had done in a minute. Today, I'm going to be joined by a brother by the name of Chris, and he is an American. Out of Sweden. And because of this whole virus, Covid-19, Sweden has, sometimes gained and lost eyes, depending on what perspective you get it from. But Sweden did something unique that a lot of the guys didn't do. Certainly the industrialized countries, let's say, they didn't lock down in response to this virus, like pretty much, I won't say every other country, but a lot of them did. Most of them did, including the country that we're in. So this guy has a unique perspective. This is why I wanted to do a show with him, because he's an actual person that understands American culture while also actually living currently now in Sweden. So he has an interesting perspective that is going to be very unique to him. So that's what this episode is dedicated for and dedicated to, the people who want that perspective, and I am going to be learning along the way. So without further ado, let's get into the interview. And here we are. I am greatly excited today to be joined by Chris, who is an American from Sweden. Oh, not well, he's from America, but he's living in Sweden, excuse me. And today again, I'm joined by Chris from Anarchy L's. My man, how you doing?
Doing good, bud. Just been collecting all the dead bodies.
Yeah, man, I hear it's crazy out there, man. I hear y'all are just stacking bodies out there. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
To hear it from our forms of media and even the other forms of media. And this is why I had to get you on, because I wanted to get your perspective on this, because there's a lot of garbage being pumped out there. And you can give it to us straight. Now, just to set the scene, I have looked at, me personally, I've looked at Sweden as a general success when it comes to the original goalpost. And the original goalpost was that you always wanted to keep the amount of people that needed your hospital resources under the available, obviously, resources that were out there, so you didn't exhaust your medical system. And what Sweden seems to prove by every metric that I've seen is that yes, they were able to not only not have to shut everything down, while also, if people needed the treatment, they were able to get it. So just walk me through the process of what it was like as, we're going into, I don't know, was it February, March, and you're starting to see these bandwagon effects going all across the nation, all across the world, and Sweden took a different approach. Just talk me through, like, what was that approach and how more so it impacted the way that you guys were living?
Well, I'm gonna first off, I'm not an expert, so all this is just coming from my.
Of course, that's what we
right?
want. That's what we want.
Well, first off, I was actually back home in Colorado, where I'm from, and right at that time it was the end of January, so that's when it started picking up. Mm-hmm. And so when I flew back to Sweden, I actually had a friend who lived in northern Italy, and that's where it all started hitting off big time.
Right,
and it
right.
freaked. There was about 2 weeks. Yeah, and I definitely bought toilet paper. I definitely did it, man. I was real worried. I saw in China that they were welding up doors
Right.
at the apartments, and there's this huge thing built up. But over time, it just never had a huge impact. I've never really felt anything because of that.
Right.
And I mean, there was never a lockdown, so you never felt that.
Right.
The stores were still opened. Even, I mean, like we keep our distance, but no
Right.
masks have been noticed at all. Honestly, if there wasn't on the news, I wouldn't have never noticed it.
See, and that's
I would have never noticed any of this.
And that's been my thing. It's like I've always wondered what it would have been like if we just didn't know that was a thing.
Think about it. Like if you never heard it on the TV, on the news or whatever, would you have even noticed it?
Right.
That's the thing. I have nobody here in Sweden has been impacted by it that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
Back home, my parents got tested positive for it, and they're fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just basically a cold to them.
Yeah, and obviously that's how it is with most people, that get it. So yeah, you guys, I know. I mean, at most they just limited like there was a certain number of group gatherings or something like that. But aside from that, from our perspective, it looked like it was just like Sweden was like, look, we're gonna let this thing, run its course, and you guys be responsible adults. You know what I mean? And if there's a business that wants to, have whatever rules that they want to have in place, they do that. But
right.
so so you guys aren't doing them. I mean, maybe you do see guys are mess, but you guys, there's no mask mandates or anything out there, right?
Not a thing, actually. It's mainly just coming down as recommendations, basically.
Right.
Man, I think the biggest thing that I've noticed is they put some like plexiglass up when you go shopping.
Okay.
I mean, I haven't been home, so I don't even know what you guys are going through. I'm living basically through you.
Yeah. And we're living through you on the other side, so we get it. Yeah.
It's really awkward being here, talking to my folks, talking to my friends back home, and trying to understand that perspective because I really haven't felt anything.
Mm-hmm.
As far as a few plans have been messed up, right? Like if we wanted to go to a concert, they shut those down. The ski resort that I live close by, it was shut down, but that was because the businesses decided it.
Right, makes sense.
It wasn't anything of government mandate about what to do. Concerts, amusement parks, they were closed down, but we got it everywhere you go to now. We have that 6 foot.
Yeah, like 6 feet or something like that. Yeah.
I've been here too long. I'm metric now. It's been 6 feet with that. You see an occasional elderly person with a mask, got some gloves
which
on.
makes sense. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Like that's up to them, but nobody just yelling at
her to do it.
Having a mask.
Yeah. Right.
Like, all right, great. But yeah, I think the biggest place that's been impacted is maybe the retirement homes.
Yeah, and I think that's what happened pretty much everywhere. Definitely happened out here. Not necessarily as much as in Texas. There were some spots, but definitely for sure, like out there in New York, like they had that those big breakouts because which was crazy. They basically mandated that the people that were testing positive for the virus had to be accepted. You couldn't turn them away. So they had to be accepted into these nursing homes. Wow. It's like a time bomb, right? It made no sense for them to do that. And obviously Cuomo's an utter failure in that regards out there because it's the most vulnerable population.
Hey, don't talk shit about the savior.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, true. Right.
How dare you, man?
Right. Exactly. But no, it's so bizarre to see those things happen. And then man, from our perspective, it's nuts because all we hear is people trying to demonize Sweden because I think what happened is the cat got out the bag really fast, how over exaggerated the virus. was. Like it got out there, and I can everybody had their were cautious. Like you go into that too.
Yeah, like I said, I was
yeah,
scared
to bought
shitless,
I bought the toilet paper. It makes sense. It's like you hear it and it's like, all right,
we need guns.
Yeah,
I get more guns.
Yeah, exactly. You start taking those into consideration, like and it's a completely reasonable thing to do. But then once more data came out, and once you realize that, okay, look, this isn't as bad. It's very infectious, but it's not nearly as bad as what they initially anticipated in terms of how lethal that it was. So what happened was, you guys took the approach. It's like, all right, we're going to go the approach. There were some epidemiologists, seemingly none of them worked for the government, but there were a lot of them that were like, we probably should go the more herd immunity route as opposed to trying to stop anybody from getting it, because that's completely unrealistic regarding a lot of respiratory diseases like this. So
I have a little different perspective on that, actually.
Go ahead.
Anders Tegnell, he's basically the CDC, Folkhälsomyndigheten.
Okay.
Here, he's the guy in charge of all of it. I think he's done a great job. People have gotten tattoos for him. He's very respected here. But I actually think Sweden, as far as that, Sweden is very status. I don't understand how living next to Norway and Denmark and Finland, why they didn't go that route. I actually think they just messed up.
Oh, okay.
I actually think that they just were like, well, we don't have the staff. I mean, before, Sweden has the lowest amount of beds in the ICU.
Okay.
In the European Union.
Okay.
So they were understaffed. Budget. I just don't think they had the capacity, and they kind of said
whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
Like what it's going to happen. Yeah, and
it just happened to work out.
It's a bit of conspiracy theory, but I've seen a lot of the politicians here who are very back and forth. Like the politicians will yell at the CDC, the Folkhälsomyndigheten, and then they'll yell back at them, and it's a little confusion, but it worked out.
Yeah.
That's the thing. The biggest thing that it was impacted, I think, is some of the students here. They have a gymnasium, it's called, and it's basically a trade school, but for like 16, 17, 18-year-olds. They closed that down. Graduations were held off. But that was about it, and I really feel like they lucked out on it. And so now as I'm being here, I can still go to the bar, go eat a steak, go have some beer, and then watch the rest of the world. It is a weird place to be, man. It's really weird.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So that makes sense. I mean, quite often that's how it works. It's like, they may have had the desire, ultimate desire to do what let's say the neighboring countries did, may not have the capacity to do it, so they didn't.
I have no idea.
Right.
No idea.
Either way, it worked out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the thing. It doesn't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter. What we can see is we still had our freedom.
Right.
Even in Sweden,
which is crazy. We got out freedom by damn Sweden. Amazing. That to me is insane to me. We got out freedom by Sweden, man.
When you had cops just beating people up for being out to a park. I mean, I saw a guy from my hometown. He got in a tussle with the cops because he took his daughter out to the park. Amazing. There's a picture of the park. It's acres and acres, and it's just like a swing set,
Wow.
And that is crazy coming from the country of freedom.
Yeah, exactly, right. It's just crazy the direction that we're moving in, and I love it. At least I'm liking that there is a country that is European country or Western, let's say, country in some capacity that didn't go the traditional route, whether they got there by accident or not. I'm glad.
Goodness.
Right. I'm glad someone didn't, because we at least had something to compare and contrast. Right.
Exactly. It's like a scientific method.
Right.
You had a control.
Right.
And luckily that was Sweden. Whether they did this intentionally doesn't matter. But as far as to go, okay, well, yes, I will say the death rate is higher here.
Yeah, of course.
It is. I'll admit it, but it's fractional.
Yeah.
It's fractional. Okay, now take into account America. the suicides, the overdoses, the loss of work, the loss of freedoms. Okay, this sounds morbid as shit. But those extra percentages that have died, is it worth that? Was it 40 million are employed? I mean, what is the unemployment?
40, 50, something 40, 50. I mean, that we know of.
The suicides,
right.
the cancer patient who got ignored. Is that also worth it?
Right. And that's what
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. You're talking about ruining the lives and the livelihoods of literally millions of people.
Yeah.
For something that it's not that lethal. It's just what the facts say. And even with, because I know that's a talking point that a lot of people use, is that, well, Sweden has more deaths than, let's say, their neighboring countries per capita. I was like, well, maybe so, but when you consider Belgium, UK, Spain, and Italy, they have more deaths per million, and they have lockdowns, right?
Yeah, so it's the same argument with guns.
Right.
They can go look at Sweden, but they don't want to look at Honduras.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So they just pick who they want to compare it to.
Exactly.
But
Bingo.
Italy, France, UK. I got a friend who lives outside of London. He hasn't been outside for months.
Man.
I mean, he's just been locked down in his apartment.
Right.
Okay, that's great, I guess. But didn't UK get hit?
Yeah, they have again. I think that right now they have. I think they're second in the world in terms of deaths per million. Right behind Belgium. And they both have lockdowns, by the way. You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things. It's like how, and I think that was obviously the conversation worth having. It's like, okay, why are we seeing that the countries with lockdowns have some of these higher deaths per million? And this is what a lot of the epidemiologists are saying. There's a lot of different things to attribute, to deaths. You can't just go by strictly, okay, well, this country has a lockdown versus this country doesn't. There's other things that go into it, like Italy's having an older population and all. Like, these are all things that have to be taken into consideration. But ultimately what happened was, even with you guys maybe having less ICU beds than, let's say, the surrounding countries and so forth, you still never got to a point to where you were overwhelmed. And that was where
never over capacity.
Bingo. And that was where the original goalpost was at. That flatten the curve. That's what all of them said, that while we had to lock down, you guys didn't. Yet never got overwhelmed. There was never an instance where it may, because like out here, and I'm not in Houston, but Houston tends to operate like 75 to 90% capacity in certain, without pandemic, conditions. It's just how it is.
But has it ever been?
No, it was never. It was never a case where, even right now, it was never a case where someone that needed treatment from the virus didn't get it. Like that has not happened. It has not happened even in New York City, where it was hit the hardest. You're talking, most of our deaths are coming from that city. When you talk about city to city, right? That even them, they never got overwhelmed. Yes. Sometimes hospitals have to roll out emergency protocols, but that's what they're there for. You know what I mean? Like that's what they're absolutely there for. You know what I mean? It's like every industry deals with that. Like, I used to work in the gym industry, and you had your sectors of times where it was just like after New Year's, right? Where it's just insane at the gym. You know what I mean? And sometimes you do get exhausted. Sometimes you do get to capacity, where you have too many people wanting to be potential members versus the amount of staff that you have. Right. It happens, but it's never nothing that we can handle, and every industry has to deal with it. So the fact that people were just looking at, okay, there's a potential capacity, like they may have to roll out some emergency protocols. I'm like, dude, that's what they're there for. That's exactly what they're there for. And we're doing all of this for something with a survival rate in the upwards of 99%, more than 99%, pretty much everywhere. And we're seeing, even in Sweden, you guys' death rates are going down. You guys' death rates are
I think it's pretty much almost down to zero.
Yeah, it's like it's
crazy.
It's getting to a point to where it'll be statistically insignificant in terms of the deaths even in a place like you guys, which is it's a bigger country. It's not like it's not like there's obviously more people there than Denmark or something like that.
But it's still. I mean, there's 10 million who live here.
Right. Exactly.
And I like people who always accuse like, well, you're in Europe and it's like spread out. Yeah, like we don't have cars. Like people people still travel and the virus still spreads.
Right. Exactly.
But the issue I want to talk about that preparation.
Yeah. Go ahead.
About. Why is no one asking that question? Why isn't there more like, why isn't this more prepared? We've had pandemics, we've had viruses. You can look back to Greek times and you can see historical articles about pandemics wiping out entire armies. Okay, but we have a space force.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and so Sweden wasn't even prepared at all. They did build an emergency tent basically outside of southern Stockholm. Never used it. There wasn't a single patient in it that I know of.
Yeah. That's how it was with a lot of the tents out here. Like it was like some of them most of them, if not all of them, never saw a patient.
Right. So we're okay. We're okay with that the state or whoever fucked up. But also, I think the people who are advocating for the mask thing and screaming at people, yeah, but you weren't prepared.
Yeah.
Like that's so hypocritical, right? Like, well, the state. I mean, I remember when it was hitting off in Seattle, and there was doctors warning about it,
right?
And they just ignored it. The CDC, the FDA, they ignored her. Okay, and you guys just ignore that. But now you're going person to person with their masks. Well, okay, but if you don't like it, stay home. You should have had the food supply. You should have been more prepared for that if you're that scared of it.
Individual responsibility, right?
Right. If an individual has to get food on the table and is willing to take that risk, you have no right to say that.
Yeah.
And I am very lucky to be here with that. I mean, I got 2 kids. Mm-hmm. I got a girl also. Like, we have to maintain this home.
Yeah.
If I would have had to stay home.
That scares the living crap out of me. You know what I mean? Because I know people that are in those positions, right? And
awful.
It is. And it's not like they aren't willing to work. It's just the state has made it illegal for them to do so. And that's
yet again, like that's the solution.
Right. It's so frustrating because, look, I've always looked at I was talking about the data, man, back in March, almost February, as we started to get more information that was coming out about the virus, right?
You were on it pretty quick.
Yeah, I was on it like immediately because I was intrigued by it. This was going to be something that was unique. We're in the age of social media, and we're about to have this thing that existed, and I knew that was going to impact people's reaction. So I wanted to talk about it and know as much as I possibly could. And I was looking at the data. You had the Chinese numbers, the South Korea numbers. They all basically said, even the Italian numbers, they said the same thing. And I was like, okay, we got average ages looking around the 80s, and the people that aren't generally have these comorbidities, have these other issues going on. It seems like the folks that are younger, my age, healthy, are relatively healthy, they're going to be generally fine, and they've been handling this thing fine. Some will have mild symptoms. Many will have no symptoms. It's like they'll get it and don't even know that they have it. They may have had chills for a couple of hours, and that was it. They just didn't know that was the virus, right? And I was looking at all of this data that was available to us, and I was like, okay, look, if there was ever going to be a policy that was built around this, it should have been centered around protecting the most vulnerable population, which was the old people. But that's not what they did.
Right.
What they did was treated us all like we were like 95 years old. And it made no sense. And that's why I said, like, people always say trust the experts, and I always reference the doctors. And I always say that doctors aren't economists. They're not economists, right? That's an economic issue when you talk about allocation of resources. Why are you trying to you can't possibly control an entire population of 300 something plus million people. It's impossible to do that. So if you know that there is a specific target demographic that struggles with this virus, why would you not focus on them? Don't allow the nursing homes to have the breakouts. Focus on the people that are most vulnerable. That would have been way more realistic instead of treating us all Like we're, again, 90 years old. At least at that capacity, you would have been allowing people to put food on the table. You would have been allowing people in some capacity to work and assume whatever risk that they wanted to assume. But that's not what they did. Instead, they applied a one-size-fits-all to every group, and it made no sense. It never made sense to me when it started. Like when all of this started to roll out, and you had this bandwagon state by state, slowly but surely, not even slowly but surely, fastly. You know what I mean?
But that's weird also. That each state is different.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? And
what the
I don't know.
And then the WHO is going back on what they said.
Right.
And the CDC. So
they disagree with it. Yeah. Go ahead.
Right. But that's the thing is, like, we don't even know what this is.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, does that justify the draconian laws and just the okay, well, how about you first figure this out?
Right.
Maybe.
Right.
I've looked at it the same comparison as the climate. This sounds really weird, but the climate people, where if we don't do the Green New Deal, you're a bastard.
Yeah.
It's the same as the mask thing. You don't wear the mask, you're a bastard, right? If we're not denying that there's a virus. We're not denying that the Earth is right. But we're questioning the ethics of it. We're questioning the economics of it. That you can't just have a religion to science and just go, this is the holy grail.
Right.
Because the issue is, okay, if you want to do what science does, which is a robot, it will just take the quickest route to figuring that out. But it will impact millions of people.
That's a good point.
And they're not thinking about that. They just going, well, the scientist said. Well, yeah. Talk to like Bob Murphy about it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but let's talk about the economics of it all. It's like they acted like that wasn't even a thing.
Yeah. Okay. So everybody's unemployed. Your taxes go down, while the Federal Reserve prints out, what was it, 2.3 trillion?
Yeah.
They send out a pitty little paycheck to you.
Yep.
Right. And then it's just like, well, the scientist said. It's like, dude.
It is like a religion to them. It's like a religious claim, and it's funny because a lot of them claim to be anti-religious, and they have.
Well, but that's what Nietzsche said, though.
Yeah,
God is dead, and it wasn't because he was an atheist. He was saying that the thought of God is dead, and this has just replaced it.
Yep.
And it's just okay. Well, the state said in America, do this. Well, the state here in Sweden said, do this. Because the thing is, Swedes in general, they aren't dramatic people. Mm-hmm. They are very when the shit hits the fan or when things are even going great, they're just very all right. Where Americans are very dramatic about it. But it's still, if the state here in Sweden said, it's not a big deal, stay at home if you want, no lockdowns. Most Swedes are like, eh. But at the same token, if the government here said lockdowns, everything, they would do the same.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Where I think in America, the media has built this monster up. So like if you saw a plane wreck on the news, you go, I'm never riding a plane.
Yeah, true.
But they just kept repeating that news about the planes that they're always crashing, even though it's very small, and they never talk about car crashes.
Yeah.
It's like, we'll just focus on this thing, and then it's just this huge. I hate to say it, but Americans are very dramatic.
No, absolutely. No,
no big news.
No, that is real talk. Like, they gave you a ticker which counted deaths, and these guys started acting completely irrationally. Like, it doesn't make, so we know and we accept that viruses have been a thing, and it didn't start with COVID-19. We accept that other things like heart diseases are going to kill more people than this throughout the year. You would think that if anything, this would be a chance for people to start taking care of their bodies, building up their immune systems and so forth, because that's really going to give you the best chance to fight the virus, not a government mandate of a mask.
Like how clean do we have to be?
Right. Exactly.
I don't understand. Okay, the masks issue, but how's that good for building up other immunities? And
yeah, exactly.
Like this. These questions, I'm not an expert. I'm just some fucking drunk asshole who started a podcast a week ago. But the things don't line up.
Yeah.
Because we had this huge lockdown back in the States, major protests, and now we're talking it again. okay, we'll do a lockdown. Oh, but guess what's coming? The fall.
Right.
Oh, well, the virus wants to build. Like, do we just do this
every time? Like, I don't know, but no, that's a good point. It's like, we know that you need vitamin D. We know that you need, I mean, really, that's what an immune system is essentially relies upon you passing around viruses, getting them into your system and building immunity. That's what it's all about. That's what the immune system is.
My kids, when they were babies, it was first time having kids. They're picking up everything, putting it in their mouth.
Yeah. That's
what they do, man.
That's good. And that's how you build. Again, that's how you build the immune system. And what we've done seems to be diametrically opposed to it. Wearing masks, staying inside, right? Not even going outside, getting sun and stuff of that nature, which seems to derail. So you have a great point. What does happen when we go to the fall and people have weak immune systems because they've been staying in their houses, not getting sun, not passing around viruses, washing everything down, their hands, sanitizing every single thing that exists. What's going to happen in the fall when you have people that this comes around and it's going to be even maybe worse than what it should be? Worse. Yeah, because, you have a bunch of weak people now. The people's immune system is weak because they've been living in bubbles for the last months. These are questions that
you got a bunch of Karens calling on people,
snitching on them to the police, right? And you see this, and it's like those questions, and that's what I guess frustrates me. Those questions aren't being asked at all. It's just we're supposed to accept it as, well, this is what the scientists said. This is what they said. Right. We have to do this, and they are God, and it's funny because generally you can't trust the scientists that disagree with them. I mean, it is science after all, and there are scientists. We know there's
like we said, we're not experts on it. I think you and I are we're criticizing the hypocrisy.
Bingo. Exactly.
Like that's all it is.
Exactly. You know what I mean? And this is why I've had value in trying to get the perspective from the other, like the doctors, the scientists, the epidemiologists specifically. I've talked a lot about Johnny Anides. He's a very, very well respected epidemiologist. And, looking at his numbers and, and looking at what he had been saying, it's funny, he called it out back in March. He said, this has the potential, because he saw the reaction that everybody was having. And he was like, this has the potential to be one of the biggest evidence fiascos of all time. And it turns out that he was right. At least right now, he is generally correct that the reaction does not at all match the lethality of this virus, right? And I think that's partially why they keep moving the goalposts. It's why I think we've seen.
Have to.
Yeah, exactly, because they got it wrong, right? So they have to go from, first of all, flatten the curve. Now it's just about people getting it in general. And we're like, wait a minute, like that was we never at first we always assumed that people were gonna get it. Why are we now acting as if nobody's ever going to get it? And then they can't talk about deaths anymore because even in America they're going down. So now they're like talking about, look at all the positive cases. Like, okay, like it was never.
What is the narrative now back in the States?
Right now, it's positive cases. It's they're looking at, okay, people are getting tested
so
more.
What?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the argument. Deaths are going down. Positive cases are going up. You think that was good news, right? It was like either we're building immunity, or the virus, this particular strain that's being is weaker. Like, or it's impacting young people. They don't need to go to the hospital. They don't need to. They're fine. Either of that should be relatively good news, unless you were a doom and gloomer. And if you were a doom and gloomer, you're like, okay, I got egg on my face now. You know what I mean? I got egg on my face. Yeah. I'm caught. So I got to try to latch on to anything. Now they're latching on to masks. They're talking about positive cases, which is stupid because it's like it's a virus, bro. We never assumed that nobody would get it ever. And now it's like they look at any positive case, right? And they're like, there's 11,000 new positive cases. It's like, so what? So what?
What's the numbers on how many people have chlamydia?
Right.
Let's get those also, because that's real interesting.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit?
Exactly. It doesn't make sense, but that's the narrative out here. And I've also seen like a lot of talk about Sweden has kind of moved out of the news cycle. They don't want to talk about you guys anymore because it's like, well, damn, if people pay attention in Sweden, they won.
But even the news here doesn't talk about it. I went to the newsstand yesterday, looked at the newspapers. On the front page, nothing. On all the newspapers, nothing. Man, nothing about the virus.
That's it's a completely different experience. It's also frustrating because, like, you think of America supposedly being the land of the free, and then we look at Sweden and they just completely out freed by maybe even by accident, but at the end of the day, effectively they out freedomed us. They out freedomed the Americans.
And the shit thing is like, I'm the new terrorist. That's like, I'm not even allowed to go to Norway.
Wow.
Because I have a Swedish passport. You know, whatever. Like, I can't go back home to see my family. Like, if I want to take my kids, we can't go. The kids aren't American citizens,
right?
But we couldn't go there to visit them.
See, do you think it's like, and I don't know, let me know if you disagree or agree. I think, and I'll tell you my views, I personally think that letting people focus on Sweden really craps on the legacy, the reputation of so many people. So I think that's why a lot of people want to stay away from Sweden, want to not acknowledge Sweden, because what it does is everything that they said we could not do, Sweden basically did it.
Right.
And got out of this with a lowering death rate, with a lowering deaths throughout the months, and having ever had no mask mandate and no lockdown. So what it does is it forces, if people focused on it, it would force individuals to look at their own governments and say, what the hell? Like, how did they get through this, having done the opposite of what you said we just could not do? And they seem, even with less ICU beds, in comparison to the people that are around them, never exhausted their hospital resources, never even got more deaths per million than the Belgiums and the UKs of the world. What the hell? So do you think it's one of those things where if people paid attention, it would even force maybe people in the community, science community, to really, like, their reputation would just be on the line and people would rightfully question it?
Well, I guess I'm going to answer it like a straight up anarchist. And I think those people in power, they have nothing to lose. Right? Like, it's more that they when they go home and they're eating dinner on their table, I think they know that they fucked up. Yeah, but I really do. I think inside, I think inside they go home, they sit down, and they're sitting there with their partner, and they go like, "Are you gonna do this? You're gonna keep doing it?" And I have a reputation here.
Right.
So if a governor continues a mandate, right, continues with the masks, continues with the bars and shutting them down, they have nothing to lose because of that. How are you going to prove shutting down didn't save lives?
Yeah,
right?
true.
Like it, right? So it's going to be a continuation of that. They're trying to get their asses saved somehow. They want to look like the good guy. Right. They're not going to come out. Nobody likes coming out. You, me, nobody likes coming out and looking like a fool.
Exactly.
And so I think they're just going to keep doing that as long as someone higher up keeps saying that. Right? It keeps pushing the narrative. Well, you go all the way to the top, those guys don't give a shit. They're just taking advantage of everybody. Right? For me, the biggest thing that no one's paying attention to is that the Fed is printing out money and all this and all those bailouts, and no one's talking about that. The focus is the masks. Yeah, but if you're a governor, you're just going off of a feeling of what the state said if they're like doing, but it's just to save them. It's just to save their own asses. Right. That's all it is. Like, right. I really don't see how this benefits America at all.
Right.
Because here in Sweden, the counties, I guess we'll call them states here, they don't really get to dictate over what happens here. Every decision is made in Stockholm.
Okay.
So luckily Stockholm is very relaxed about it. But in the States, it really feels state to state to state to state.
Yeah.
On where these rules go and dictate. Well, isn't that retarded?
Yeah.
Like I don't understand. Like, you know what I mean? Like how can Wyoming, right next to my home state, Colorado, I don't think they give a shit.
Right.
Right. And you go, oh, it's like lower population. Yeah, but they still have a capital city. Like,
Right.
they still have issues. Right. And so it's this huge clump of the federal government and then the states. What they need to do is try to reduce that power somehow.
Ooh.
and dictate what's best for New York City might not
Facts.
for Boise, Idaho.
Facts.
Right? Like that's crazy. That's crazy to just be like, But these governors are trying to protect their backs. They're trying to do it. And I don't know what Trump's doing. I don't know if he's like, I mean, he does his little press conferences. I've tried to watch them, but they're unbearable.
Yeah, man. It's like, it's hard to
I don't know
gauge
what the
him.
federal government is doing.
Well,
I mean, is the federal government doing a lot with the states?
I mean, they're not doing. Thankfully, it never got to a point to where there was like this nationalistic lockdown out here. Thankfully, that never happened. However, they did set a lot of rules, and definitely when it came around the time to this, the packages, stimulus packages, and so forth, and all the rules that they said, which, that's how the federal government operates. They're like, hey, you have to do this if you want access to this money or you want access to these resources. So
hold them hostage.
Yeah, basically that's exactly what they do. They hold them hostage. So what it does is it forces pretty much all of them, forces their hand to do these certain things to get access to all of this effectively. So while they may not have ever came down with a complete national thing that they must do, which some of those exist, but a lot of it comes in forms of rules. And it's like, okay, if you do this, you will then get access to these resources. If you don't do this, you won't get access to these resources. And that's utterly what happened. But one of my arguments...
Great solutions.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, fantastic solutions to this problem, right? But that was always my argument from the get-go early on was, you put it perfectly, like, New York City should have never been treated like really anybody. New York City is arguably, it's certainly one of, if not the most unique city in the world. Nobody else lives like that. Nobody else
lives. Be the mayor of that place.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Fuck that. Yeah, like that is their living standards, their culture is just so different. It's like you're on a different planet, man. So it's like they got hit the hardest first. One of the aside from the Upper West Coast stuff, but like they got hit the hardest first, and everybody,
which isn't surprising, though.
right, considering how they live and so forth. But then they were treating us like we were them out here in Dallas, and I'm like, yeah, we don't live like them. Like we don't live like they travel everywhere. Public transportation, we don't do that out here like that. We have public transportation, but we're not packed up together. And you have these big swabs of people within these small square. We don't have that out here like that. You know what I mean? But they treated us as if we lived like them, and that was an unfortunate situation because even now they still have on the upward of, I don't know, like I forget what the New York numbers at 20,000 deaths, and we only have like 2,000 out here in the whole state of Texas. Even though we're more populated than New York, we're more populated in New York, not New York City, but more populated than New York the state, and we have far less deaths than them. And it just goes to show why, the anarchy in both of us, why that localization is more important to solve those issues, because we're better suited to come up with solutions as opposed to trying to mimic what people do in these very unique areas. They're not like everywhere else. For example, even Sweden has a more like Michigan. Like if you look at their per capita population and so forth, they have a lot of similarity to Sweden, right? Like it's a lot more similar than even in comparison to some of the nations around you guys. Like Michigan has, for example, a very and the numbers seem to fit that as well. But we don't pay attention to stuff like that. We generally just look at, okay, well, this happened there, and we don't want it to happen here. Therefore, we gotta do what they did. And it's like, no, we don't. We don't have to do that at all. We're just going through the motions right now to try to do what pleases and what more so makes people happy, feel good. Right? It's like the mask thing. Scientists are sitting here disagreeing with each other right now. They disagree with themselves.
Yeah, but that's science.
Right, exactly. That is science. Right. It's science. Some scientists.
You're supposed to always question. Like they will look back at this 100 years in the future and still study this shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Just as the Spanish flu, they still are curious about how that fucking worked.
Right, exactly. And it's very unfortunate because
that's the consequence of larger, even if it's just the state who decides, right? We'll just say Colorado or Texas, whatever. If the governor decides something, to see the results of that takes a much longer time than a more localized reaction to it.
Right.
Like that. If we just say, okay, America has to do this, but Canada has a different rules.
Right.
Like Mexico. Right. Well, that takes a long time before you see that impact.
Right.
Versus seeing maybe just a city, how they react.
Right.
Like how they react to it. How did that work for them? And like you said earlier, thank goodness Sweden was neutral in this.
Man.
Because I will say, man, I still have my job. It's a shitty little job, but it works.
Hey, it's a job, man. Some of us don't.
It wasn't essential, right?
Right.
And I still got to keep going there.
That's awesome.
Right. And so I think people need to start realizing that it's more than just Fauci, right? Like it's way more than that. That one guy can sit there and dictate things. I don't know what Trump, if he's like putting in martial law and shit. But my biggest problem that I have being over here is how the reaction when George Floyd got murdered. That whole narrative was just like, all right, we'll time out.
Yeah.
You wanted to bury your grandma.
Oh my God.
That's not okay. But you want to throw Molotov cocktails and
bricks or whatever you want. You want to link up with hundreds of thousands of people. Go for it.
Okay, I get that. I get that. Fine. Get angry, get pissed, get mad. I get it. But then to go back,
man,
and like go fuck yourself,
man. Like that. That
immediately,
dude. I said on the Blaze, I was like, at that point, there should be a mass civil disobedience. At that point, you got to tell them to go fuck themselves.
How can you go back?
Yeah.
There's no person who wakes up, who thinks about today, what do I want to do today, and like make decisions and to just go, oh, what's let me open the newspaper. What's the narrative today? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Masks are required again. Sorry about the riots.
Amazing, isn't it? Amazing.
What are you talking about, dude?
It's absolutely amazing that it ever got to that point, and now we're going back on. Like they lectured us, went back on everything they lectured us, and then went back again on what they had lectured us previous to. We had that 3-week period where the social distancing, all of that went all out the window. Like all of that was just, it was like not even a thing no more. Not even a thing. We're not doing this no more. We're gonna go protest and we're gonna go riot, and it's gonna be fine. And it
was mainly from that same side also.
Right, yeah, no, exactly. The side that was lecturing everybody about the social distancing then said, well, it's okay to protest. And now now that the protest and the rioting slowed down, they're going back to the original thing. And it's like, what the hell? Like, so I told our listeners over at Blaze, I was like, look, at some point we gotta say, they're holding us hostage and they're rigging the game. No, at some point we just gotta go tell them to go screw themselves, because if they continue to see that people don't want to change, they'll just do whatever they fucking can and whatever they'll get away with, and that's what's happening. So there has to be a massive, form of, I believe, civil disobedience. So remind me again.
Be violent? You think it'll be violent though?
Well, that's a good question. I would hope that. Now I think all of us would agree we don't want it to get to that point.
Ugly, man.
At all.
Can I say?
Go ahead.
Three things
Go ahead.
Whether this virus thing, we know it's a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can agree on that, but we can discuss on the hypocrisy and the rules. But all right, so they're ramping up the virus thing again. I have 3 things that the riots will continue. If that officer is exonerated, if the economy tanks, I mean, like Great Depression levels, or Trump gets elected.
Oh, man.
Okay, so all that happens, or if one of them happens, do we just go ahead and turn off the lockdowns again, right? And it's just like this game that just goes on and on and on.
Yeah, it's completely arbitrary.
So I actually don't see, and I always try to be very optimistic. I always try to be, because why am I trying to be optimistic? I guess because being an anarchist, it's hard to be optimistic, because you can be very negative and you can just judge the state and you can say this is their fault and this is their fault. But I always want to try to be optimistic about the future things.
Makes sense.
But I really don't see a positive outcome. I mean, I really, because this virus thing has ramped up again. That terrifies me. How many more is going to be unemployed?
Yeah.
How many more people are going to overdose or depression or alcoholics and suicides? And okay, and then on top of that, throw in those 3 scenarios. Good luck, man.
Man,
I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad I'm here.
Yeah,
right now.
man. And I'm glad I'm strapped to the gills, man. In the event that people,
I will say I'm jealous of that, man.
Yeah,
Being in Sweden. I ain't got shit. Right now.
yeah. That's the one positive thing, man, that I can see out of that, and that's a very legitimate point, man. It's like
I'm gonna have to start a refugee camp here.
maybe get us the hell up out of here. So yeah, I want you to remind our listeners and me as well. So what side of Sweden are you in?
I'm in Dalarna. It's about like 3 hours, I guess, west of Stockholm.
What's Stockholm?
It's a little more country.
Nice,
side.
man. That's the best setting.
So I mean, like,
that's the best setting to live.
I think if you talk to someone in Stockholm, they'd feel a little differently. But in general, the same. Like I said, Sweden, everything is judged throughout the whole country. It's not up to states or anything.
Yeah,
it's decided
in Stockholm anyway. Yeah, right. Makes sense. And I mean, that's like I said. I'm glad we have someone out there like you to give us that perspective, because you do have a unique perspective of both. At least coming up in in American culture, but living out there. And it's just so bizarre to see some of this play out. While you guys out there are just no masking it and no lockdown in it. It's just fucking. I'm obviously jealous as hell.
Yeah, watch out if you see a Swede at the airport.
We'll do. You guys are terrorists out there, man. We gotta keep those guys isolated.
Yeah, keep those Swedes, those northern people who don't give a shit about anything besides the weather.
Yeah. Oh man. So again, Anarchy Ales.
I just started that podcast.
Uh-huh.
It's brand new. Basically, it's just me being. It's more therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
I've been battling depression, and I just needed to get these ideas out, because
that's what it's
honestly, about. Eric, I truly do love you, man.
Thanks, Chris.
Even though you're in Texas and I'm up here in the Arctic Circle, I really look up to you, man. And
appreciate that, man.
I started that podcast just to. I don't know, get more libertarian, anarchist ideas out there.
That's what it's about, and we need more of it. We need more, as much as we can get. I feel like there is no person, small nor big enough, that could join us. I mean, all of us are
for everyone.
Yeah, it is absolutely for everyone. So Anarchy Ales. Again, guys, I'm going to link that in all the show notes, all the description, all of that. You'll be able to check out Chris. He has a podcast that started recently. He has a few episodes already live. You can go check those out. Chris, man, I appreciate you joining us, and we'll probably it, dude. Yeah, man. I'll probably have you on again soon, because this shit's gonna keep getting crazy.
Yeah, man. You call me when it gets closer to election time.
Gotcha, for sure. We'll get you back
you're
on.
You're always welcome here, man.
Appreciate
Anytime,
it,
man.
Appreciate it, man. Well, again, man, I appreciate you joining us. You can, of course, check the rest of this episode. It's live on all major digital platforms. Thank you so much, Chris. Anarchy Ales, again, that's it. And until next time.
Actualize the man.
Thank you. And until next time, guys, y'all be easy. Peace.
That's going to do it for today's episode of For Canon Sake with Eric July. Be sure to keep it locked for the best mix of comics and, of course, social commentary you'll ever hear. And I mean ever hear. To get caught up or contact the show, please be sure to visit forcanonsake.com.